What's up guys, TechLab here, and today we're going to be taking another look at the Mirage 5 CPU cooler from Aerocool. In a recent video we actually took a look at the performance of this CPU cooler, but we noticed in the comments you wanted to actually see more about how to install it. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to be installing this and showing you how to do it. So this is the Aerocool Mirage 5 cooler. If you want to know more about the specs, make sure you check out our previous video where we took a look at the performance of it from noise level to thermal levels, and we'll link that video at the end if you haven't already seen it. In short, it actually performs very similar to an AMD Wraith Prism cooler, which is obviously a stock cooler, so it's not that great, but it works fine and it looks actually pretty cool. As far as the installation components we've obviously got a backplate. Now they provide a backplate for this, like many CPU coolers do, and you have to actually build it up, and it fits either the Intel or the AMD. We also have some AMD brackets, so this is actually a screw down cooler. It doesn't use the clips from an AM4 board or an AM3 board. We also have the Intel clips, which actually just mount the other way around and obviously fit an Intel socket, and they also provide you the 2011 Intel mounting, but this actual system doesn't come with the LGA 1700, so unfortunately, it's not going to be suitable for anybody on either a 12th or 13th gen Intel. You also get a cable which actually allows you to program the RGB lighting in this, but if you don't install it, you actually just get the rainbow effect, so you don't really need it, but if you do, it's actually a 3-pin ARGB connection, a standard connection, which we do love here, and then it goes into a bit of a PHT, which actually just plugs straight into the extra extension on the bottom there. To demonstrate the install, we're actually going to be using this board from MSI. This is an X470 AM4 motherboard. It's actually a pretty decent motherboard, and we've had it sitting around for a while, but we thought it would actually be pretty cool to show you on this one. Once you have your board, obviously you need to install your CPU. We've actually pre-installed this CPU, and it is an AMD Ryzen 7 1700. It's one of the oldest that we've got that actually came out of our editing rig, and we actually upgraded it not so long ago. We did a video on that, so make sure you check out the channel if you want to see that. Next, we need to actually remove these brackets off of the AM4 board because we don't use the clip system with this cooler, and to do that we'll need a screwdriver. Once you have a screwdriver, all you need to do is undo the screws from each of the brackets, from each corner, and then just remove the back. Now once we've removed the hooky brackets, we have to remember to remove the back plate. The back plate should just drop straight out. If you're doing this inside a case, your back plate might actually just drop into the back, so you'll have to go hunting for it later. If you are installing this cooler onto an Intel motherboard, then you don't actually need to worry about the back plate because they don't come with one, they just come with holes in the board, and usually Intel coolers will either come with a back plate or they just actually hook straight in if you're using something that's stock. Now that we have the motherboard prepared, we need to actually look at the cooler, and the cooler comes in two parts. The first part is this actual new backplate that we'll need to build, and then we have whichever type of bracket we're going to use that needs to go onto the cooler itself. Now when you open the actual brackets, you're going to get a number of things. The little yellow clips have the word Intel on them, so we don't need them. And the little black ones say AMD, so we will need them. Them clips actually hold these little pegs in, which are going to go through the back plate, and then it will go through the motherboard. You also get 4 screws, but they're actually for the cooler brackets themselves, so we'll move them to the side. And then we'll take a look at the bracket. Now looking at the bracket, this actually fits many different versions of Intel and AMD boards, so we need to find the right ones. If we flip it over here, we'll see that we've got AMD 4 and AMD 3, so that's AM4 socket and AM3 socket. And we need to take these little T-shaped brackets and we need to drop them through the AM4 slot, just like that. Now they'd only go in one way, so you need to turn them around and then they'll actually fit down flush into the actual holder. Taking the plastic clips, we want to click them over the top and they will actually hold that little bracket thing in place. That's one of them, and then you need to repeat all the way around. Now that we've got the last one actually installed, we need to put it onto the motherboard. So all we'll do is we'll pick the motherboard up, place the bracket, line it up just like we would do with the normal AM4 bracket, and flip the motherboard around. This will actually now, moving those clips aside, give us some little mounting holes there for the actual cooler itself. Now for this cooler, obviously we will need the AM4 brackets, and if we take them out of the bag, what we'll see is these are actually screw down types. So they don't use the hooky system with this cooler, they actually use the screw down. So if we move this motherboard to the side, take a look at our cooler and flip it over, we will need to remove this sticky pad. Don't forget to remove this when you're actually installing it, otherwise you're going to get thermal paste all over it and your cooling performance is going to be decreased. Using the screws that we got, we need to actually flip these brackets upside down and then drop a screw in like that. Screwing these down. We don't want them too over tight, but we also don't want them to come loose, so we just need to screw them down just so the bracket won't come off. Even with vibration, we'll do a little pinch at the bottom, take the next bracket, screw that to the other side. So now that we've got the bracket actually installed to the cooler itself, all we need to do is line it up on the motherboard. Now obviously before you install this on the next part, you'll need to add your thermal paste. You can use whichever type of thermal paste you want. The cooler itself does actually come with this little sachet. I don't really know how good Aerocool thermal paste is. I generally use Arctic MX4 or something of that range, but you can use whatever you feel is necessary. Now obviously you can either fit it this way or this way, so it depends which way you want the cable coming out. I generally actually have it coming out the top of the motherboard, so we'll install it that way. What you need to do once you've added your thermal paste is line up the little screws onto each side. And they are spring loaded, so they should bounce into the AM4 place. You could just slide them across a little bit. And once all the screws line up, you can take your screwdriver and you can start to screw them down. Now what we want to do is just turn each corner just so it grips into the actual back plate. And then just like any other cooler, you want to go alternate each side, so going diagonally across, giving it a bit of a turn at a time. So we'll just go 1, 2, 3 turns. We'll go on this side with 1, 2, 3 turns, and we'll just keep going around just like that. And what that does is that allows the cooler to go down onto the CPU even, so that your thermal paste actually gets spreaded out as even as it actually could be. So we'll just keep going around until it goes all the way down. Now with just like many coolers like this, as you're actually screwing it down, the threads themselves, because they're actually spring loaded in here, will actually bottom out, and it's at that point that you get just a bit tight and you know that it's actually down enough. You want to make sure that's done on each corner, and then the cooler is actually set at a nice pressure onto the CPU. And that's exactly how you install this. Obviously you need to plug your wiring in, so we would take this out of the back and then plug it into the motherboard at the top there. And that is the cooler installed. Now the installation approach for this is exactly the same for Intel as it is for AM4. You would just use the other brackets and they would screw down basically into the same backplate, just using the other clips and the other holes in the backplate. This is actually a pretty simple installation approach and is pretty standard for most coolers, although some of them out there do have some unique kind of things. And I'm sure if we actually get some of those coolers in the future, we'll go through them too, if that's what you want. But for now, our cooler is installed and we can actually start gaming. It's also better if you actually do this outside of your case. If you are doing it inside of the case, you might find there's a little bit of problem with room, because sometimes you do have the fan at the top, fan at the back, and trying to get your hands into everywhere, it's going to be a bit awkward. If you don't already have one, make sure you get an extra long screwdriver. This isn't one because we're actually fitting it outside of the case, but you can actually buy extra long screwdrivers which will go down the side of the actual cooler and reach the screws themselves. That actually helps dramatically when you're inside the case. But like I say, it's usually best to do this outside of the case, because what you don't want to do is add too much pressure to anything so that you end up damaging the board. Sometimes on Intel systems, particularly because of the way that their pin system works, with the pins being in the board, if you actually do warp your board when fitting a cooler just like this, the pins can actually not touch the CPU, and that can cause you issues, and you'll sit there trying to figure out all the issues for ages until you realize that's exactly what it is. It's the cooler pressure. Usually to solve that, you either need to just undo these screws a little bit at a time, just so that it actually warps the board back. But as people have been aware, on some of the, particularly the LG A1700 sockets, which this doesn't fit anyway, so you won't have this problem, you do get that issue, and then they actually build those contact plates which you can mount to your board first, which keep everything actually pretty stable. And that is the installation of the Aerocool Mirage 5. If you've got any more questions about this, don't forget to add them to the comments below, or join our Discord server where we've got lots of builders who are happy to help with anything just like this. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content like this, and we'll catch you in the next one.